Okay, first thing we have to do is I'm going to have to put my quiver on the bow. You don't ever want to set up your bow without the quiver on. You want to get it as close as possible to how you're going to shoot it during hunting season. The only thing that's going to add it to the string, and I should have got them on there, is some string silencers, because that will affect the spine of the arrow. With graphite, it's not as big of a deal. If you're shooting wood, make sure you do this, because wood arrows vary so much in themselves, but graphite will kind of compensate for that. All right. Hey, if you just tuned in and you're like, well, what kind of bow should I get anyhow? Go right here and take a look. There, I will have another video that shows you the difference in profile and bows. So go over there, check that out. A little bit light, maybe 7.5. I'm gonna go to 7.5/8. I like 7.5/8 on Wade's bows. All right, so once you got your bow back together, I got it. Checked my brace height, my knock maybe just a little off. I'll know when I shoot it. If I get a lot of straight up and down porpoising coming out, my knock's probably off. Your knock is in a pretty good spot. Your knock set is in a pretty good spot. You just take your arrow, and the place to start is about level. You can even put a bow square on it if you want to, and then square it up off of your bow square. I usually don't, because once I got it set, I'm usually not level coming off, depending on the bow I'm shooting. So, all right, let's take a look and get this going. Okay, so what we're doing here is I got full length test arrows. I got one in a 400, one in a 500, and one in a 600. I don't think I'll even touch the 600. And after we've looked at the charts, now I'm kind of in between a 400 and a 500. So I leave them at full length, and what that does for me is I could adjust spine by cutting arrow back. The longer the arrow is, the more spine you have. I'm shooting for a 500 grain arrow. So if you look here, just the shaft, once it calibrates, is 314. So if you put your insert in, it's 332. Then put a 200 grain arrow in, or a 200 grain. So that puts us right around that 500 grain mark. So that's what we're going to shoot for with this setup. That whole setup will give me about 500 grains. Gives me pretty good FOC. I didn't check it out, but I'm going to take a look. Now, one of the things though is if I do this and it's still over spine, then I'm going to have to drop down to the 500, because and then I'll have to cut it back to reach my spine. You don't want much on there, just enough to hold it in your target. Then you gotta go for it. There we go. All right, so who would have known, if you take a full length 400 grain, put a 200 head on it, 200 grain head on it with an insert, that it would be perfectly spined for your bow. So we're gonna, I don't want to shoot a full length arrow, just because, I don't know why, but that won't be bad. I won't be that much, probably a couple grains, couple 3 grains, but we'll go with it, and I'll go ahead and get with it. All right, so I know it's kind of confusing because I'm talking 500 grains and 500 spine, but there's a spine that's a 500, which is the amount it bends, and then the grain weight is 500. So I'm shooting for a 500 grain weight. We're gonna come a little bit under, but I'm gonna take this arrow and do exactly the same. I'm gonna keep it full length, put an insert in it, and then shoot it. Do, 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 do. Meet George Jetson and his dog Goofus. All right, so as you saw, the 500 spine arrow with 200 grain up front at full length was a weak arrow. It was kicking and hitting to the left and kicking to the left as it was coming out of the bow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat that back up, because we just used regular heat glue. We didn't use anything real heavy duty. We just used hobby heat glue. Heat that up, and then I'll pull that out and I'm going to cut it back. And as I cut it back, that's going to increase my spine. I'm not losing much weight doing that. See, so these are 8 grains per inch. So each inch I take off, I'm losing 8 grains, which is a lot better than having to switch your head weight. Now, if I want to gain that weight back, you could buy spacers and put them in there, or go to a heavier head or something like that. Okay kids, don't try this at home unless you have a leather glove, or you can use the back of your tab. And see how easy that is? So it sticks it well enough. It sticks it well enough to keep it in the target, but not too much that you can't get it back out so you can cut your arrows. Little trick. You've been at this a while, you'll raid your wife's stuff. Alright, so now I'm going to cut off an inch to start, because I kind of got a feeling I know where this is going to shoot. I've shot these arrows a long time. If you don't feel confident in cutting off an inch, just go a ½ inch increments at a time until you get your spine to be what you want it to be. So I'll measure it with my bow square. Then I like to put them on my roller here, so I have it on my broadhead roller. But I'll measure it an inch. Let me get back here to where I can put it on there. I'll hold it there, and then I get my handy dandy little Dremel tool, and I set it right underneath, and then turn it on. Just come back a little bit, turn it on. And you just turn it on top of there, and that makes a really handy flat cut. People sell, if you want to buy a tool to do this, they sell them. It's just, if you have a Dremel, just put a real thin blade on it and use your handy dandy roller. And now we're an inch shorter, so we're going to go ahead and hot glue this back together with my wife's hot glue gun. Alright, so there we have it. We got it cut down. I'm going to go ahead and shoot it. I got a feeling this might be my arrow setup. I may have to take another ½ inch off or so, or maybe even another inch, but we're getting close now. Right, so we pretty much are right on with this arrow spine-wise right now, but that's with a field point, and broadheads are longer than field points. So what I like to do is I like to make them a little bit spine heavy with a field point, and then I'll call that my end weight. So if they shoot a little right with field points, they'll shoot right on with my broadheads usually. So I'm going to take another ½ inch off this arrow, put it on there, and maybe I'll even grab a broadhead and shoot it after we're done. I'm done. Well, it didn't take us very long, right? No. One of the big things is go off the charts and then go from there. Keep your arrows long, keep coming back until I like to go with what I want for weight wise. Keep my arrows long, keep cutting it back until you get into the spine that you want. That's the easiest way for me to do it. All right, now we got the arrow tuned to our bow. It's close to the weight that we wanted. It's a little bit spine, just a little bit heavy, but that's kind of how I want it, because our broadhead will bring it out to here, so it'll bring us back perfect with the broadhead. So that's how I like to get my arrows. I start, again, I start with a full length arrow with the weight that I'm looking at. I use the charts at Three Rivers to get my spine pretty close, and then I keep cutting it back until I get that spine just right with the weight I want. So we're here, we're checking in at 482 grains. So we're at 482 grains, and that 482 grains is well within, it's close to what I was after with that 500 weight. So now After you've seen this, the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get your broadhead sharp, so go ahead and view that video next.